your SMU day. I am a Penn State day. That's all we need.
And Montana State. I'm rooting for them in the made up schools. Or incarnate word. Yes, sir. All right, friends, back in action. I had a couple of people, great friends of the show, ask us, are we going to be doing a college football live before Lock for Championship week? Come on now. You know Matt Gajewski better than that. I guess you know me too. We had to do it. We had to. We got 6 games here, a lot of money up for grabs, and a lot of storylines. So we are going to get right after it, have some fun here, answer your questions, hopefully make some money. I am Ben Reza. That is, of course, Matt Gajewski. We got a little appetizer last night. I was too much of a baby to go out in the cold at West Point and be in the freezing conditions to watch Army, but we got some treats last night. Now we got 6 games today. How are you feeling? Sporting a Marquette hat, big game for them as well.
Yeah, the battle for Wisconsin is on. But more importantly, we have conference championships and a lot of buys on the line for these teams. But it's going to be an exciting day regardless. Even in the small conferences, these are really impactful games to them. They certainly care about these games. And I mean, if you win your MAC championship and stuff, it sets you up for even better bowl games. So everything's on the line for these teams. It should be a great day of football, all competitive spreads.
Really competitive spreads, really competitive games. Yeah. Well, buys are on the line. Disgracefully, we don't have enough time for me to complain. I think SMU's playoff hopes are on the line in their game, even though it shouldn't be. And then, yeah, you've got Miami of Ohio, Louisiana, teams like that. I don't get to, and Chad, I see all our good friends in there. Let's have an awesome show. But I don't get to ask you this often because, we do the main slate every week. I'd say it's always about 12 games, give or take. This is 6 games. It's probably, analogous to maybe like a night slate or an afternoon slate or something like that. Does that really change a lot on your end? Or is it just, okay, we just have, less pivots, less options?
Yeah, there's not too much that's different. Sometimes when you get down to like 3 games, you run out of viable options at certain positions, especially when you're dealing with like max slates and they're platooning quarterbacks, but we should not see any of that here. Pricing's loose. You can kind of play whoever you want on this slate.
Ooh, okay. Well, we're going to get into some game theory and all of that. The first thing we always start with is injuries. And I'm going to obviously go to you, but from my vantage point, it looks like there's not much. Tyson is obviously not playing. Big loss for Arizona State. I believe that Woldridge, of course, is not going to play either for Louisiana. ETN, maybe? Are we really waiting on any news anywhere?
We're waiting on ETN, and I think he's going to play.
Okay.
I don't know at what capacity, but he's been limited in practice. So suggests he should be giving it a go. Some of our competitors aren't projecting him playing, which I think is a mistake. Use that to your advantage if you think people are going to play Frazier. Some of our competitors just realized Draylen Washington has been practicing this week, so that's unfortunate. Thought we had a potential edge there with the Louisiana backs being overowned, but that's been corrected largely. I think it's basically just ETN being the only one we don't know. Benjamin Brommer's going to return. Not sure at what capacity. Expect them to rotate tight ends for Iowa State, but it should be pretty clean as far as injury goes. Unfortunately, the big one's in the 3:00 game.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on it. And that is another thing. So it's an obviously, normally the window is like 12 to 3:30, something like that, 12 to 4. This is 12 to 8. So stay sober. Be ready to swap if you have to. Do the best you can. It's going to be a crazy day. We got all sorts of things, but let's start to get into it. Do you still see, again, we got 12 teams. Are you still looking at basically large majority 2 QB lineups?
Yeah, because it's so loose.
Okay. With those QBs in mind, obviously we'll be able to go through all of them, but it does seem that Kevin Jennings, he's been awesome, outstanding all year. He's $6,900, really, really favorable pricing. He's probably going to be one of, if not the highest owned quarterback on this slate. You have some other pay down options though. Braxton is cheap. Fields is cheap. Levitt is kind of cheap. When you start to break down your quarterbacks, are you living in that range or are you going to go get like Cade Klubnik?
Yeah, I mean, you can play Klubnik if you want. It's sort of, I mean, you need to make small concessions in the slate. Yeah. You can't just play like Klubnik, Scadabo, Brashard Smith, and then go up and play Tez Johnson. But you can certainly play 3 of the 4, 2 of the 3, however you want to break it down. So Klubnik, I think, is sort of a luxury that you could easily get to. I think he's the preferred spend up option because he's running a lot more recently. And his receivers are extremely cheap, so you run into very easy stacks with him. I mean, he has 437 yards on the ground. He's definitely one of the better price-adjusted plays, even at an expensive tag. And I think just going down the list of top price-adjusted plays, you get Kevin Jennings, second or third. Also very mobile, extremely efficient, averaging almost a first down every time he drops back to pass. Clemson's defense is not as good as people think it is. They have this sort of reputation for being an elite defense, which stems from the glory years of Dabo. He's just neglected the roster, and they've gotten so many injuries that they're playing kind of some scrubby players at this point. SMU's played better teams than Clemson this year. It just flat out is what it is. So the matchup certainly doesn't scare me, and I don't think you should be. They're favored in the game. And moving down the list, I think probably your third best quarterback option is Braxton, just because he runs so much. You're looking at a guy who has at least 14 design carries over the last 3 games. I think you're probably living in those ranges for cash.
With that in mind, so obviously, again, there's going to be incremental pricing. There's not going to be as many options. In terms of the pay-ups, you mentioned Klubnik. Do you have him decisively ahead of like a Dylan Gabriel and a Parker Navarro?
Yes, pretty clearly. It's mainly just game environment stuff. Gabriel has the worst props he's had all year. It's probably just because they're playing Penn State, who's a pretty good defense. I'm hesitant to anoint them like an elite defense because of all the lapses they've shown this year. But I mean, I still think he's a great GPP play. You're just kind of leaning into some risk with that because he doesn't project as well as normally. But if anyone has a ceiling, it's Gabriel. I'm going to be certainly boosting him. Navarro's tricky because he has to do so much of it on the ground. He's not really a passer. And that game environment's very bad. You're talking about 2 of the slowest teams on the slate, both of them outside the top 100 in pace. So it's not like the greatest game environment we've seen for Navarro. To rank the expensive guys, I think it's pretty clearly Klubnik, pretty clearly Gabriel second, pretty clearly Navarro third.
Where's Ewers? It's not.
I think Ewers is unplayable.
Okay. Because of Archer, just because he's just not giving you enough.
Okay, I'll try to avoid hot takes. For DFS, he's really bad because of the sacks he takes. He's negative 35 yards. Their pass rate is modest. It's like right on average, 48.5%. He's averaging 230 yards per game. They played the easiest schedule in the SEC, which is why they're in this game. And we've seen him implode against better defenses. He imploded in this first matchup and got benched. I don't know, man. I don't think a Tua Tagovailoa, Jalen Hurts situation is out of the realm of possibility in this game.
On the other side of that exact game, Carson Beck has been a little erratic at times. He's probably going to be one of the lower owned quarterbacks on the slate. Does he have a home in terms of different lineup builds? Obviously, everyone is somewhat playable. He'll be sub 10%. But what do you think about Beck? He's kind of in no man's land here.
I think they're both in no man's land. I probably will play a handful of quarterbacks in lineups from this game or none at all. This is a bad game environment too. So not to just like call into question Ewers' talent. I mean, you could do that with Beck too. This game is a 49.5 total. These are Texas is an awesome defense. Georgia, I think you could poke holes in, but they're still a pretty good defense overall. It's a really bad matchup for both of these teams. I think Beck is probably a little better DFS-wise just because their pass rate is 56%. He's going to have more volume, which in games this year, he's averaging 284 per game compared to Ewers' 230. But I do think Ewers is better pass catchers. So, I mean, what Georgia has at pass catchers is kind of negligent considering they could get anyone they wanted in the entire country. And Ewers has cheaper stacks. It's just like Beck doesn't take sacks, whereas Ewers does. So, I mean, I think they're both pretty unplayable.
Yeah, I mean, again, we still have plenty of options that we talked about. I want to get to the last couple quarterbacks in a second, but I actually want to circle back to Braxton specifically. I assume that you're comfortable just running him solo, running him naked, just given kind of how he profiles.
Yeah, absolutely. He's the leading rusher on this team since he took over. and I don't really see that changing. He's led the team in design carries each of the last 3 weeks. That's on top of what he gives you scrambling, not taking a ton of sacks. Braxton is a very safe play, and it wouldn't be surprising to see him 100-yard bonus. His passing props, you're going to see them anywhere between like 140 and 160. That's is a decent number. The only problem is like Louisiana plays really slow. I don't know if that's going to matter. Vegas doesn't really think it will. The total's still 57, which is very high. But Marshall's also been awful this year. They've had to run extremely hot to get here since they made the QB change to Braxton. They've won 6 games in a row. 3 of those games, they were outgained just yards per play by their opponent. They should have lost 3 of them. They're like incredibly lucky to get in this game. I think there's a non-zero chance they just get absolutely murdered by Louisiana. So I'm still a little hesitant with him.
Good. I bet Louisiana.
So did I.
Probably my favorite.
That's a problem for you because I keep losing bets.
I'm bringing us home. I had Jacksonville State yesterday. I'm feeling good. Louisiana's going to get it done for us. All right. Let's talk about the last couple. Rocco Becht. Clearly, we'll get to his pass catchers. They always populate, particularly on FanDuel. I feel like I've said Noel and Higgins the entire year. He's 7,600. He doesn't have a QB right next to him. Sam Levitt's 73, and then you can get to the pay up options a little bit. Does Becht have a home, or you're just kind of indifferent to the play? He grades out right in the middle in terms of ownership, 10%.
Yeah, I think that's about where he should be. I think he's better on FanDuel because of pricing. But this game has a low-ish total on this slate. Becht has played a lot worse recently, and I think it's just his offensive line catching up with him. They're awful. 49.5 total is not fantastic. This is another really slow game. Arizona State is 107th in pace. Iowa State 86th. The redeeming quality with Iowa State is they will boost their pass rate up from 47% pretty drastically in certain game environments. We've seen them up above 50% in a number of games this year, so the volume could be on his side. He is efficient when he's kept clean. That's just a major question, really, at any point they take the field at this point. But I think you still like these stacks for tournaments because the targets are so condensed. 55%, 60% of the targets any given week are just going to Higgins and Noel. So when it hits, it's like extremely predictable. So I think you should have at least, if you're running 150, like a portion dedicated to Becht. And then on FanDuel, because of pricing, it's a lot easier to play him.
Are you playing any Drew Aller?
Yeah, like I got 3.5%, 3.3%. It's 5 lineups out of 150. I don't think I'm going to take that out of there because he does run a fair amount. And in games that have been really competitive, you see less of the like Pribula stuff. Their second quarterback they use as a gadget player. His snaps drop in those games. They increase sharply when they're murdering the bottom end of the Big Ten. So I think Aller's fine. Nothing that you really want to make a big stand with.
Then, I mean, why not? Because want to make sure we get to everything. I don't think this guy is going to factor into the slate, but he would be the cheapest of the quarterbacks. And that would be Brett Gabbert. I like Miami of Ohio in life. I just don't know if this is the best spot game-wise, environment-wise. What do you make of, someone that would open up some salary for you if you played him?
If the slate was priced a little tighter, I think Gabbert would come into play more. He's not the most mobile. He has -8 rushing yards this year, but he generally finishes slightly positive historically. And he's still kind of like weighed down by the incredibly difficult non-con they've played. Miami, Ohio has a pass rate north of 50%. So in certain game environments, the volume's there for him. He is efficient as a passer, and he also has a hyper condensed target distribution. 3 receivers play every single snap. Honestly, 4 do, but one of them's not targeted in Andre Johnson. So I mean, I think Gabbert is okay. I just don't really think it's something you need to do. You're taking on a little more risk than is absolutely necessary on the slate. But if you're playing 150 and you want to do like 2 to 5% Gabbert, I don't think that's crazy.
Let's talk about FanDuel. Again, it's going to be the same, of course, cast of characters, but some of the ownership does look to be a little different. Particularly, it seems that Braxton kind of gets maybe a little boost over Jennings over there. And then you still have the same regulars, Chandler Fields and Klubnik, Beck, and then you've got a lot of dart throws, same guys at the bottom. Do you feel the same way about the 2 sites today? You said pricing is soft. Is it soft across the board? Is it one over the other? How do you break that down?
It's soft across the board, I think. Okay. You have a higher ceiling price-wise on FanDuel. It's not really at the QB as much, but I still think Klubnik is the preferred pay up. Kevin Jennings is your preferred mid-price option. And I don't think you need to punt because like, what are you really gaining by doing that? But they also did a better job pricing Ewers and Becht. Like Ewers is the cheapest quarterback on FanDuel that's playable, which is where he should be. Ewers and Gabbert should have the same price. So I think honestly, if you want to throw a dart on Ewers and then just pay up to all the expensive skill position players and make a Texas stack, it's a lot more viable on FanDuel. The one guy we didn't mention, who I think is the best GPP play on the slate at quarterback, is Chandler Fields on both sides.
Okay.
We have almost no sample of him this year, but he started a lot of games last year when Wooldridge got hurt. Very good mobility. I bet the over on his prop. He already has 74 rushing yards this year. He had fine mobility last year. His efficiency over 2-year sample now, where they basically have played the same amount of games in 2 years because of injury. Fields has better efficiency. I mean, I'm surprised he wasn't the day one starter. I had him projected as the day one starter heading into the season, but then Wooldridge took the job. I don't think there's any drop off from Wooldridge to Fields. And I think the designed attempts are being underrated in the prop market. He has designed attempt numbers of 7, 6, and 6. That's just design, not even scrambles, over the last 3 games. Their offensive line is solid. They've only allowed 13 sacks all year. Marshall's defense is modest, but as far as Sunbelt teams, they're not even like towards the top. And Louisiana's pass rate is 45%. We've seen a couple seasons recently where Louisiana's pass rate's like 33%. This is a far more balanced Louisiana than we've seen in recent years. So I think Fields is being significantly underrated. I like playing him in tournaments, and the best thing about him is you don't need to play a lot of him because no one's playing him.
When you kind of drill down into those lineups, because you mentioned the mobility, is it a skinny +1? Is he naked? Obviously, all their pass catchers, I know we'll get to receiver in a bit, but I'm just interested in Louisiana. All their pass catchers are very cheap.
They are, and part of the issue historically even is they just will use 6 of them. This year, it's become a little more condensed. Legendre has taken like kind of the alpha role, which is a surprising factor. I mean, he played quarterback for them previously. So he hasn't always just had like a sample to fall back on, but his route rate has jumped above 70%, 2 of their last 3 games, one of them being non-competitive. I think he's a pretty easy click. Terrence Carter at tight end also avoids that tight end rotation. His route rate has been 86%, 90%, and 63 over the last 3 games. They're cheap, so you can very easily stack him, and it's more condensed than it ever really has been for Louisiana. I wouldn't really play anyone below those 2. You're getting into dart throw range, which is where they start rotating. But yeah, I mean, those guys are pretty easy plays. And the other thing with Louisiana in the pass game is people that are asleep at the wheel this morning, and some of it's not their fault. Other providers have just missed some stuff. Bill Davis and Zylan Perry project better than they should across the industry because people assume Draylon Washington's out. He's been practicing, so I fully anticipate him playing, which would reduce this backfield to a 3-man committee rather than 2, which has been the assumption most people are working under all week. So if you're not paying attention this morning, there's a chance that the Louisiana backs are overowned compared to where they should be.
That's why you're here. At Stokastic, we got you covered. No doubt about it. We're going to get to running back in a second, but I do want to mention we've got all sorts of things going on. And I'll talk about, of course, the tools that we've got with the Sims. But right off the bat, deal is ending. I'm going to Odd Shopper. And if you haven't been over there, I had a couple people saying, DraftKings bets? Oh, I got you, my friend. Oddshopper.com. We have you covered. Whether you want to use tools like Portfolio EV or you want the Discord, we've got everything imaginable. But we're running a deal, and it's expiring at the end of this weekend. It's our Cyber Monday. We kept it the whole week. We did it Cyber Week. You know what the code is? Cyber Week. 70% off Portfolio EV for that first month. Use that code. The offer's valid, like I said, through Sunday, through tomorrow. The link is in the description. We'll drop it in chat. You've probably seen the screenshots on Twitter. You've probably heard us talk about it. It's changing the way people are betting. We are using these tools to identify value at lightning fast speeds, mass entry, so you can bet 20 bets at once, portfolios where you can get customized notifications of, I only want to know about NBA 3-pointers on FanDuel. I want to know about only NHL bets. I want to know only about OS ratings of 5 or better, the best bets. We've got you covered. Come on in and see for yourself. You get in the Discord, changing the way people are betting. And again, if you're going to do it, 70% off. These don't come around that often. Really, really cool stuff. We couldn't be more excited at all the new faces in there. Now, you mentioned running back and some of the news there. The other news, again, Tyson being out, it's not like Scatterbo wasn't going to be popular. He's 10,300. Is that a spend that you're willing to make today? Do you think he's going to take on even more work for Arizona State?
I think there's a chance you just remove the only other player that's really in that elite category for the offense. And everything was already flowing between these two players. Now removing one, it could be like you wouldn't be all that surprised to see Scatterbo lead the team in targets. He's already tied for second with the tight ends. I mean, it's pretty wild out there for him. His carry counts have been 25, 28, 21 in their last 3 games. The 21 carry game was a slaughtering in their most recent contest of Arizona. Target counts, he's averaging 3.6 per game. He's averaging 42.5 receiving yards per game. I mean, Scatterbo is going to be the most involved player on the entire slate. And with the pricing, he's just very easy to get to. Assuming there are other good running back plays, so it's not like you need to play him, but I think he's very clearly the first guy in your lineup for cash games and stuff. So if you're fading him, just be careful. I'd probably play some chalk in those lineups that aren't him.
I mean, running back pricing is interesting. You have him at 10,300, $2,000 different to Brashard Smith, $500 difference to Jordan James, and then you're in the sixes. So it really, from the 4th most expensive running back on DraftKings to Scatterbo, you're talking about a $3,600 gap. So you're going to have really weird pricing. I'm assuming you can do it because pricing is soft. Are you looking to just go like, give me Scatterbo, give me Brashard Smith in the same lineup?
You can absolutely do that. You're probably looking at playing like Jennings and Braxton, Jennings and Fields, something like that.
Okay.
But you can definitely play these lineups. As we get to receiver, everyone will see the Clemson mispricing, the amount of 4K and below receivers you can actually use in your lineup. So yeah, I mean, as long as you're not trying to also play Klubnik, this is pretty easy to do.
He's so important. I just want to make sure we talk about every scenario. Are you okay putting Scatterbo with Levitt?
I didn't get a lot of Levitt, so I don't really have. Let me see if I have any Levitt. Yeah, I don't have a single lineup of Levitt. Okay. So I guess the answer, but let me check FanDuel.
I mean, I don't think that's a build that I would super entertain, but given that the offense is going to be so concentrated on a 6-game slate, I think you could do it. It wouldn't be my preferred build.
Yeah, I mean, if Levitt hits the ceiling passing, Scatterbo probably has something to do with it because he's their second most targeted player, tied with Mateer. So I definitely didn't go in there and make any rules against that. I just didn't get a lot of Levitt naturally, which I think kind of makes sense. He's basically a game manager.
Jordan James, been solid all year. I don't really know. Oregon is a mystery team. I know they're the number 1 team in the country. I'm not sure what to expect today. That line is a little shady. He's 7,700. He feels pretty appropriately priced. Is that kind of how you have him, or is it a guy that you're making a stand on?
I think you could play Jordan James. I actually like him a fair amount in this game.
Okay.
Tough matchup, but the reason I like him is I think he's probably a little underpriced given the role he has in competitive games. Let's just look at their last 4, for example. Competitive game, 23 attempts and no targets. Non-competitive game, 6 attempts, 3 targets. Competitive game, 25 attempts, 3 targets. Middling competitive game, 15 attempts, 6 targets. And this is like mirrored in Noah Whittington's opportunity. In competitive games, his opportunity dwindles. In non-competitive games, he's closer to like 10 touches per game at the expense of James. It's just when games are important, he's on the field a lot more, which makes me think, if he had the 25 touch game every game, he probably would be like 9,700 instead of 77. So even though it's a difficult matchup and the total's not great, you're probably looking at closer to that touch ceiling with James, which gives him a pretty good floor and why I think he's interesting for tournaments.
Do you see any difference in how Penn State allocates their carries in competitive games, or do you think that those two will continue to operate as kind of a dual threat backfield?
They've been tricky all year because at various points in time, both Catron Allen and Singleton have been banged up, especially Singleton. When both are 100%, I think it's 50-50, but it's very hard to parse this backfield right now. We've seen them both have touch floors recently without really much indication that they're injured. I think the only real difference is Singleton has a better pass catching role than Catron Allen. Neither of them project particularly well because it's a split backfield on a team implied for 23 points.
Working down, Phil Maffa, he's always on the slate. He's $6,700. 20 carries against South Carolina, which was obviously an extremely competitive game. He did nothing with it, 66 yards. I mean, he only had 3 carries against the Citadel. That obviously is self-explanatory. But I mean, this is a guy who, in some games, he's flirted with 30 carries. I mean, it's serious volume. All in chip situation for Clemson. If they win, they're in. If they lose, they're out. I respect SMU's defense. Do you worry about the matchup, or is Maffa's volume too much to keep him in play?
I'll definitely take shots on Maffa. 18.8 touches per game. That rises drastically in competitive games. You mentioned the South Carolina match, but I think that's a tougher one than what SMU has, but it's not all that different. Maffa right now is my tied for third most owned running back with another player in this price range who I think we're getting to next, Quintravion Wisner. But I think this is kind of like your GPP range. Maffa, Wisner's going to be a lot more owned. So I think if you want to make that pivot, you absolutely could. It's almost like the Jordan James thing. Maffa is just going to be way more involved in competitive games, and you really can't draw up a more competitive game than this. Clemson literally needs to win for their postseason aspirations.
Oh, yeah. No, if there's one team that their fate is sealed, it is them. And I think they're going to lose, but that's neither here nor there. You mentioned Wisner. So every slate, and I feel like it's such a fluid situation. His boy, Blue, is right next to him. It's $300 difference, and he's about 1/15 the ownership. Is there anything there, or is it just, what, if you're going to go to Texas, the prudent move is to pay $6,300 for Wisner?
I think that's the prudent move, but I did force Blue into 3 lineups.
Just a splash.
They run the hot hand. So it's last game, 33 carries for Wisner, 5 for Blue. Past game, 3 targets for Wisner, 1 for Blue. Snaps, as you can imagine, hugely in favor of Wisner. But it's not all that long ago we saw Blue lead this backfield. Blue's a very good pass catcher in his own right. Fumbles have largely been his kryptonite. I just have played this game too many times with Texas where there's a mistake, one of them gets benched. I'm playing a lot more Wisner. He's the player tied with Maffa in my portfolio for the third most ownership. This is among my own lineups behind Scatabo and Smith. So I certainly think Wisner's the better play, but I just don't want to be left out to dry. Wisner decides to turn his back to the defense and run the wrong way.
Been known to do that. So one guy in this range that, again, it's one of the only pieces we're waiting for. Are you going to play ETN? Are you planning on playing him? Or are you saying if he plays, it renders Frazier useless and himself useless?
I'm not going to play anyone on Georgia in the backfield.
Okay.
And there's a couple reasons. First of all, ETN is projected back, but they also got back Roderick Robinson last week, and they're projected to get back Branson Robinson this week. Both of them were ahead of Frazier on the depth chart heading into the year. Both of them have more experience, and we're projected to actually be pieces of this backfield. So the very least, I think it's probably a little more of a timeshare than people anticipate, and it could just be rendered useless entirely if ETN is back. So I don't really think this is a spot where you need to take the risk, especially with like 6 or 7 legitimately good running back plays. Scatabo, Smith, Maffa, Wisner, James. There's players below that are viable. We'll get to some of them. So I don't think there's really much merit to taking a shot on Georgia today.
Yeah, a couple of these other guys who are about to get there, there are sub 5K options, and we don't get to say that a ton here. I'm talking about like a Bill Davis. I'm talking about, I don't even know how to say this guy's name, Mosey, kind of a cool name. Miami of Ohio back. Are these the pay down options you're looking to? Zylan Perry, maybe? How low are you willing to go?
I don't want to go all that low. I think the best GPP play on the entire slate maybe is Anthony Tyus, the Ohio back.
Interesting.
They would probably need to be leading in this game, but that's not crazy. Miami, Ohio is only a 2-point favorite. We've seen him with unbelievable workloads, and last week was murdering, so don't look too much into that. They killed Ball State. The week before, he had 33 carries, 33. He's done that a couple times this year. He's their most efficient player on the entire offense. This is a Northwestern transfer, so he comes from a P4 background. And he's involved somewhat in the pass game. They don't throw a lot to their running backs, but he is the best route rate by far at crest 50% in competitive games. And the thing with Ohio is they have a 39% pass rate. When they're winning, this will go all the way to like 29, 28% pass rate. And Tyus is going to have a monster workload in those environments. So you have these tail outcomes where Tyus is like 35 carries and no one's playing him. He's been injured recently too, so I think that's part of the reason why. But I think since he's come back from injury, seeing him put a 33 carry game under his belt gives me some confidence. I gave a pretty decent boost to him. I want to be over. He's a player I want to be actively over the field on.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, listen, there's no doubt about it that if Ohio dictates, they want to go full army and just absolutely melt you on the ground. So I get it. That is an interesting one because he's kind of in a no man's land salary wise. On the other side of that game, though, I do want to talk about Miami of Ohio's backfield and specifically Mosey, who gets some work himself. He started the year not uninvolved, but pedestrian amount of carries, particularly in non-con, and now he's getting some serious work. Now, he hasn't caught a pass since Vietnam, it seems. I don't know. Apparently, he can't catch, but he certainly can run the ball. What do you make of him?
They have a specific role, a third down role for Kevin Davis.
How do you have no catches? You can't randomly catch the ball? That's absurd.
Yeah, I don't know. They've done this for a couple of years now. Mosey does not play on third downs. He does not play in clear passing situations. He's not going to catch a pass in this game. So he has to get there on the ground, which leaves him a little sensitive to game script. If Ohio, this is twofold. I'm going to actually probably make a rule not to play Tyus and Mosey together. I do think they're extremely negatively correlated. Yeah. Because Mosey's not going to catch a pass, and Ohio is very sensitive via their pass rate. So I don't know. That's an interesting thought to me. I'm going to see what my lineups look like with these guys. I'm not sure if I want to play them together. They're cheap though, so that's the other thing too. If it's it doesn't have to be one of these teams blows out the other. It's a 2-point spread. If it plays to that, they both could get there. So maybe I won't do that. I've talked myself out of it.
What do you make of? There's really not that much else. Like I said, the Louisiana back. Are you playing like a Carson Hansen at all? That's a name that I didn't think of, but now that I look, he's not going to be popular at all.
I think I'd rather play Sama at 3,500.
Okay.
Iowa State is just running the hot hand. That's just a salary thing. Save yourself $500, see what it can get you. If it doesn't get you anything, you could play Hansen. They will sprinkle in Jalen Jackson, but it is sort of moved towards the two-man backfield of late. Just kind of tricky. I'm not sure you need to get all the way down there. That far is pretty greasy. You have the Marshall backs down there. They run a ton, but a lot of it's coming via Braxton right now. So it's probably just play Houston all the way down or don't play a Marshall back. I'm not playing a ton of the Louisiana backs. Bill Davis, I think, is overpriced at 4,900, considering it's a three-man backfield. Zylan Perry at 3,600 is somewhat interesting to me, but his role has been pretty suspect through the year. He's averaging 9.7 touches per game. People are clicking him because he had 19 carries in the last contest, a game where Draylen Washington didn't play. The next most recent game he played, he only had 3 carries. So I think he's extremely risky just by himself. And he seems to be one of the preferred cheap running backs people get to. I would rather play, find the salary. Instead of playing Davis into ownership into a 3-man backfield, I'd rather play Tyus and just find the salary to make it work.
Let's go to FanDuel. Let's see what we got over there. What's changed running back wise? No surprise. I think we know Scotabo is going to be at the top. Wisner is at the top. The same names are up there. It really doesn't look like a lot different. I would say, maybe you look, the Penn State backs got pushed down a little bit, and there's just not as much room maybe for the Flyers. The Georgia running backs are rendered useless over there. I don't see a lot of differences. Did you notice any differences?
The only real difference is the Texas backs are cheaper comparatively when you look at DraftKings, just for the sake of comparison. That stems down to blue as well. So you're going to get more Wisner naturally over there at 7,500. Cheaper than Maffa by 500. Same price range as Tyus. Cheaper than Mosey. Cheaper than Singleton, the Penn State backs. So pretty easy to play Wisner, Scadbo as your two like cash game backs over there, and then rotate for GPPs for the most part outside of that. But yeah, I'd be pricing is similar outside of Texas. FanDuel just priced Texas pretty cheap.
Would you rather have Bill Davis or Mosey for a small field?
That's tough. Probably Mosey.
Yeah, live a little. Come on, whatever their name is, Red Hawks, I think.
I mean, Mosey's going to be less owned. I only have 1 point separating them in projection, roughly. Yeah, I mean, there's downside to Davis too. He's averaging 11.2 touches per game.
Louisiana's kind of not a mystery team. I shouldn't say that, but yeah, to me, the path is a little clearer for Mosey. I'll say that much in my mind. All right, we're doing good. We got things rocking here. Let's go to wide receiver, but I do want to mention, as I always do, I know college football is winding down, but first of all, bowl season is coming, where it just gets truly out of control. If you're interested in checking out the college football tools or anything, you say, you know what? I love college football, but NBA is going to start taking focus for me. I want NFL. Don't do baseball because that would be truly insane. It's not here. But you can try our sim tools, the tools that we're all using, and you see the screenshots for free for a month just by signing up at any of the partners. The link is below. It says DFS Sims for free. When you click it, you're taken to our partner page, and it's so easy. It's just you have the options of all these different books. And not only are you getting the bonuses, I want to be clear. It's not like, oh, you'll get a month of the Sims and that's it. You're also getting the bonuses from a BetMGM or Caesars or Bet365, whoever you choose. You simply follow those instructions, and for every one that you claim off that page, you will get a month to deploy of the Sims. It's that easy. You can do a couple months of one sport. You could do 1-and-1, whatever you want. Core DFS package for any sport. It doesn't get better than that. Not only are you getting the bonuses and the value, you're getting the tools to support the book you just got. Really cool stuff. We're super excited about it, and I hope you guys are too, because with all these sports, with these tools, it makes all the difference. Use that link. Got to follow those instructions. Now, we go to wide receiver, and man, you weren't lying that wide receiver doesn't have that guy. Warren is the most expensive at 77, and it's very incremental pricing. I want to start specifically with him. Every time we mention Penn State, so far it's been timeshare backfield, Aller as a flyer. Is Warren a one-off that you want to get a lot of?
I do want to play Warren. I want to play Warren and Tez, the two expensive receivers that people aren't getting to. On Warren specifically, I mean, it's largely just going to come down to how the touchdowns are distributed on this slate. He's averaging 9.5 targets per game over the last 4. They hand him the ball on the ground. He hasn't seen fewer than 2 carries in any of their last 4 games. When they play in these hyper competitive spots, he doesn't leave the field. He's their best player by a wide margin on offense. I think it makes sense to play him. He's not going to be owned today. And I think you can honestly say the same thing about Tez on the other side. Was really encouraged with his route rate in their last game, even though they didn't really need to use him that much. But, you got a game under your belt, hopefully knock off some rust. That 68% route rate is almost surely going to jump into the 80%, if not 90s for Tez. If you had him at this price in like week 4, he would be like 55% owned. But one thing the books do is they underproject guys as they return from their injuries. I think Tez is really no different in this spot. I like specifically getting overweight to both of them.
So yeah, I want to ask you about Tez, and you just were talking about it. So he comes back. I watched that game. He wasn't like crazy involved, but at the same time, it was somewhat in hand at times. Do you expect him to kind of rev it up here? It seems like you are definitely looking to buy.
Yeah, he's going to be like 20% owned or less. Same thing with Warren, which is wild considering how, like, these are your 2 slate breaking receivers. Maybe you could throw one of the Iowa State guys or the Antonio Williams Clemson receiver into the mix, but they have a little bit more spread targets. Like Iowa State, there's 2 of them that get the ball. With Clemson, I think you could argue there's 3 or 4. With Oregon and Penn State, when their offenses are playing optimally, these are the very clear target alphas for their team. And the only thing you're probably sacrificing is maybe a little bit of Scadabo ownership in your portfolio or Klubnik or something like that. So I think they're awesome GPP plays on this slate because you're finding 20% or lower on both of them.
When you look at some of the other guys up there, Iowa State immediately, Jaden Higgins is there, Jalen Noel is there. One-offs, do you have a preference between the two, or is it just to Becht? What do you do with them? Because they're always featured.
Yeah, I'm playing 27% Noel, 29% Higgins. They're fine as one-offs. I don't like using them together unless they're with Becht. Okay. I mean, it's just so condensed target-wise. I don't think there's really much to say about them. They just receive so much volume. It doesn't really matter if it's efficient or if their total's 23, 24 points, which it is today. 1,000 yards for both of these receivers so far this year. They're both averaging about 85 per game, a little bit more for Higgins at 89. They're just rock solid plays. I think the ceiling is lower than Tez and Warren when those two are hitting. But I mean, you can't go really wrong with these two. They're just so involved.
No doubt about it. They're so involved. That's the first game. I'm very interested to see. When you look at, so the other thing that I thought was pretty fascinating was the ownership disparity is kind of all over the place up top. And I'm kind of referring to Coleman Owen, who I'll be honest, I don't know a lot about, but he's $7,100. Is it just a product that Ohio truly does not want to play that way? Because he's not getting any love.
Yeah, he's averaging 7 targets per game. He kind of needs to be coaxed into a ceiling game via pass rate. You just, the big difference is Ohio doesn't want to play like this. Quarterback's averaging 176 yards per game through the air, which is just far different, even than Penn State. Certainly different than Dylan Gabriel in Oregon and Iowa State for that matter. He's just too expensive. He should definitely be cheaper than Antonio Williams for Clemson. So he would be a very, very big stand. If you're playing him, I think you just roll chalk everywhere else. I'm not sure I have him in a single lineup. He's just mispriced in the wrong direction.
Antonio Williams seems mispriced in the wrong direction, potentially the other direction.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, just it's going to be busy. He's been awesome lately. Even last week, he missed the 100-yard bonus on the number. 12 touchdowns on the year. Just he does things. So what do you make of him? I assume he's going to be a popular option today.
Yeah, you should probably be in your top 4 most owned receivers. 100% of the routes last game. One thing Clemson did is they entirely trimmed the fat against South Carolina. They're going to have to do the same thing today unless it's a blowout or something. On that 100% route share, he had 10 targets. In his last 4 games, he has target counts of 9, 17, 8, and 10. Averaging 11 targets per game in that span. Just a rock solid play. You could make an argument he should be the most expensive receiver on the slate given this volume. But I mean, with them trimming the fat, I know we're kind of going price by price, but that also makes Bryant Wesco and TJ Moore the best value plays at receiver on the slate. You're talking 75+% of the routes for both of them at the expense of Stellato, who's in the portal now. Randall didn't play really. Tyler Brown's been injured. Cole Turner, his routes were severely cut. They basically did not rotate receivers. It was Wesco, it was Moore, it was Williams, and then Brenningstool has always been their every down tight end. Just hyper condensed with Clemson. It's a 1-game sample, but that was against South Carolina, an extremely competitive game. Now that their playoff hopes are on the line, you would think they'd roll that back out. Bringing it back to Williams. If he's going to play 100% of the snaps at 6,400, he's an awesome play.
Oh, they have someone named Olson Pat Henry.
He's their backup tight end.
That's quite a name. Any love for Antonio Williams over 63.5 receiving yards?
What do I have him projected at?
I don't have your prop. Again, one of the many reasons you want to go and get into Discord. It's value like that. And I'm going to look after the show. I was just wondering if you knew off the top of your head, because I'm kind of seeing that and it seems low.
I have him at 71.5. So yeah, I mean, decent value towards the over.
You mentioned you don't, and I totally agree with Higgins and Noel. Price points are slightly different, so I want to ask the same thing. Do you have any interest in having 2 Clemson pass catchers without Klubnik?
Yeah, I think you easily could, and it's largely just a price thing.
Yeah, exactly. He's 9,000.
Yeah, they make the rest of your lineup work, like whatever stack you wanted. These are the receivers that get you there. You don't have to play them, and I mean, you could play one of the 2 because there's other value options in the slate, and there's actually a lot of options. These are just going to be the 2 that are most owned, it makes a lot of sense. Like, awesome offense. One of the games that projects to be back and forth with a high total, condensed route share. I don't think you really have any of the pass game vulnerability that you do in some other offenses. Like Clemson's pass rate is 53%. They played a really easy schedule. Like they're going to be throwing the ball. SMU is also pretty balanced. I don't think you have much risk there. This is just an overall safe, solid game environment to target with really cheap options.
Roderick Daniels again, part 1,000. Are we going? He's flat 4.
Yeah, he's awesome. Again, injuries have been the real driver here. Why they've consolidated routes. Target counts of 6, 5, 7 last 3 games. Gets carries once in a while. I think the only real wrinkles here is SMU has some players that are now eligible because of some redshirt rules. This is new this year. Postseason, so that includes conference championships, do not count towards redshirts. Derek McFall can play in this game, and Romello Brinson can play in this game, potentially reducing some snaps, but Roderick Daniels has emerged as their wide receiver 1 over the course of the season. At 4K, he's very good.
Some other guys, and then we'll round it out and we'll take some questions, some pay down options. You've got Reggie Virgil, Legendre. We talked about him. We talked about Daniels. What about George? Any love for like Lovett? You mentioned Georgia's pass catchers are underwhelming. I guess unless I'm missing someone, maybe Arian Smith. Is there anyone that really is in play?
You're very kind to players. Like your choice of words will say underwhelming. I'll just call these guys bad and stuff.
Bad.
But yeah, I mean, Lovett is averaging 5.8 targets per game over the last 4, 7.1 over the course of this season. Like his volume is basically the same as Roderick Daniels, but he's in a much worse offense and game environment. So, I mean, it's very tough to play Lovett, Smith, or Bell. Like straight up, this is a fun exercise. Who projects for more raw points? I'm going to find this out right now. Wesco or Lovett? Yeah, it's Wesco by like 2 points.
Yeah. Poor Georgia. Is there anything else you're getting to any I don't know, like a Matthew Golden? I know you're not in love with the Texas passing attack, but like Bond or Golden, anyone like that against Georgia?
Not really. Okay, so Bond I think has some upside. Gunnar Helm is very lackluster. He just plays a ton. He just can't really do anything. He's a non-dynamic tight end. I think you're getting a really solid floor, really limited ceiling. Bond, I think, has been limited by some injuries recently. Like his route rate has just been so bad. Golden's on the field every play, but he just can't draw targets. He's averaging 4.3 per game. Bond, I think, is the ceiling to potentially earn more routes after he's been really limited coming off the injury midseason. It's just still you're paying for that, which is tough for me to get to. I don't think you can play the Texas cheap receivers. There's still too many of them. If you're punting at places outside of Roderick Daniels or the Clemson receivers, I'll kind of go through a couple that make some sense. If you have the salary for Terrence Carter for Louisiana, or if you're playing Chandler, I think 4,100 is fine for him. You have almost every single route. The Oregon ancillary receivers and Ferguson at tight end are very cheap. They're not going to project as well because you have like a target monster in Tez Johnson. And the passing props in this game are honestly a little worse than Clemson, which is surprising. But if you wanted to play Ferguson, Holden, or even Evan Stewart, I don't think that's crazy. Brenningstool is a direct pivot off both of those receivers in the 1 game sample. Brenningstool plays every single snap, but he's almost like Gunnar Helm in the way he's used. It's just like less exciting than those receivers. You're not going to have as high of a ceiling. Xavier Gulleroy should be the number 1 receiver for Arizona State. I see people trying to debate this, but he's been ahead of Malquan Stovall all year. I know McClain is eligible to play in this game. I think that's probably a rotation between him and Jake Smith and Troy O'Meara. I don't think you really want to get there. Plus, they don't want to pass the ball. Down at the bottom, you could pivot off Daniels and play like a Keyshawn Smith, but Daniels projects better and he's cheaper, so I'm not sure that's necessary. I hope that's kind of like a tier sort of breakdown of all these cheap receivers and the order of preference. Lastly, I guess Montgomery for Marshall, but they don't want to throw the ball either, so it's tough to play them. The only position, Miami, Ohio has 3 really cheap receivers. I think Cade McDonald is the best one and he's the cheapest, and that's about it for cheap receivers.
Yeah, so even though Arizona State has super cheap receivers, it's still murky.
Murky because they don't want to throw the ball. Murky because their top 2 target leaders are their tight end, Mateer, who doesn't play all the time, and a running back. Gulroy has been a win sprinter the entire year. He actually was semi-involved last year. Stovall's been even worse. And then like Jake Smith, Troy Omeyer have already been rotating. Malik McClain was clearly behind him behind those 2 guys because they decided to redshirt him. He's eligible now because of the redshirt rules. McClain has 3 targets in 4 games this year. I don't know, man. I think it's tough to play any of them. I would probably just play Mateer or pass, or Gulroy at 32.
Oh, that's fair. I get that. All right, this is an interesting one. I think I know where I would go. Warren, Maffa, or James as the last piece in for a tournament. I would go James, but you have good options there.
I would go James too.
We'll get to our last minute in James or Warren. It would still be James. All right. We do this every show. Chris Albers, appreciate this for the super chat. Let's go tournament. We'll go quarterback, running back, and wide receiver. Here we go. I'm going to try to get some, it's 6 games, but I'm still going to try to find some goblins. Quarterback. I'm going to steal yours. I'm going to go Chandler Fields. Sorry. That's why I get to go first. Running back. I'm going to go, again, I want to be clear. I'm going to go with Zylan Perry if you need a real cheapie. I think he's pretty damn cheap. If you're really jamming elsewhere, I think you can do that. And then I'll go wide receiver. Where do I want to go at wide receiver? Give me... Honestly, Roderick Daniels is just the answer every time at flat 4. So I'll give you a couple of cheapies there. There's plenty to go around now.
Yeah, you stole the best QB. So
yeah, I had to.
Dylan Gabriel, I think, is second. Just maybe a pivot off Klubnik at much lower ownership. At running back, I think it's Tyus for Ohio. Second most recent game over 30 carries. Needs to play to that a little bit, but he's not going to be owned. We're talking like 10 to 15%. Wide receiver, I think there's a couple directions you could take this. I think all of the expensive receivers are under-owned. I would highlight our Penn State Tyler Warren. And then if you're looking for a cheap guy, I think you could honestly play Brenningstool under 5% ownership, somewhere in that range, compared to Wesco, who's probably going to be north of 30, TJ Moore, who's probably going to be in like the 15 to 20%. You're not running a lot of risk. Like Brenningstool is going to be on the field. He's very involved. He's your second leading target getter on the team. It's surprising to see this gap where it is.
Would you rather have... Oh, go ahead.
Chris, we owe you $5. You did a super chat on Thursday and Lofty didn't read it. So we owe you a super chat, Chris. I know you keep giving him big supporter of the show, but we owe you one.
Yeah. So next time you want one, my friend, if I'm on the show on Sunday, hop on. Don't just drop your question. You don't need to and we will treat it as a super chat. We got you. See, way to be paying attention around here as I'm just in the woods. Ferguson or TJ Moore for a cheapie? I think it would be TJ Moore for me.
Yes.
Jennings and Smith in the same lineup, all good. A little SMU onslaught.
Yeah, Smith is a pretty good pass catcher.
Ooh. What about a Clemson onslaught? Klubnik, Moore, Wesco, Maffa.
You can definitely do it. It's going to cost you like $3. They're so cheap.
So that I'll say this. That's probably like double level absurd because if you're going Clemson onslaught, I would not strongly recommend, but Antonio Williams not being in there, I think is an interesting wrinkle.
I agree.
But yeah, Legendre Love, I think he's fine.
I think he's pretty good too. It's rare to see a Louisiana pass catcher as involved as he is, but it's been pretty consistent week over week. I think you can play him.
Yeah. Yeah, Luffy. No respect, that guy. I'll talk to that fella. Higgins with Scatabo stacked with Klubnik and Wesco and Williams with TJ Moore easy. Yeah, I mean, that all makes sense. No doubt about it. I didn't expect any news. I think we're in pretty damn good shape. Again, I'll mention very quickly everything we've got going on here at Stokastic. Talked about that. The links are below. They're for you guys. And we have something for everybody. Whether you're looking for tools, you're looking for the Cyber Week deal, whether you're looking for the Marketplace Discord. So if you say, you know what, I want some college basketball picks today. I want to ask about some news late in the day. I want Matt's props. I just bet German soccer as I do every morning. You know how it is. Those links are below. as well. Braxton or Fields? I know you like Fields quite a bit.
I think just straight up, it's going to be Braxton.
Yeah, but there's a game theory element to that. Give us an ultra hot, scorching take before lock. That UMass basketball could beat UMass Lowell mercifully, hopefully.
I don't know if this is scorching hot, but I think Texas should bench Ewers and play Arch.
That's a great one. Honestly, and I don't want to get this because I haven't even bet this myself. I'll give you a scorching hot take. I think Penn State's very live to win today. I don't think Oregon is that good, and I hope I'm wrong because I love Oregon in life. I'm really interested to see this game. You know, they're big games. They've all been in Eugene. This is going to be a really interesting test, and I wouldn't be shocked. I'll say this is my scorching hot take. Penn State's going to end up as the 1 seed.
Yeah, I mean, it's scorching hot for a reason, but if you beat Oregon, who's the number 1 team, where does that leave you? There's a lot of parity this year. I don't think this should be hot, but I think SMU should be in the playoff regardless.
Oh, they 100% should, but they're 100%. Not going to be if they lose. It's disgusting.
And I guess the other scorching hot take is that neither of the Big 12 teams truly deserve to be here, but this conference has been so wild that it's just kind of what you get. Just power ranking wise, quickly, the order I have these teams ranked just for fun is Colorado 1. This is based on play on the field. BYU 2, TCU 3, Kansas 4, UCF 5, Baylor 6, Kansas State 7, West Virginia 8, Arizona State 9, Cincinnati 10, Iowa State 11. Now, this is all very, very close, so don't think like Iowa State at 11 versus Colorado 1 has a significant gap. Most of these spreads would be within 3 on a neutral field, but isn't that wild?
It's insane. It's insane. How do we feel about Pat Navarro? He's very mobile, and I think if they play in the right game script, he could be fine, but he's not my favorite.
Yeah, he's sensitive to game script, but he runs a lot.
Yeah, he does run a lot. Yeah, it's insane. And I mean, Big 12. Oh, yeah. How about the final words? Because he was a friend of the show for the whole year. Your boy, Mr. Daniels, is coming back for his 19th year, apparently. Did you see that? Kansas gets their quarterback back.
Dude, he's been playing a shorter amount of time than Bowman.
Well, Bowman. Oh, yeah. Let's pour one out for the Stillwater Mike Gundy era. Hell of a run. Hell of a season, guy.
I just don't know what he wants. He can't field a roster because they don't have any money, but he's not willing to take a salary, like a pay cut. Plus, he's like always doing these weird eccentric things, hiring D2 coordinators and stuff. Maybe our best take the whole year was being on the under for Oklahoma State.
That was a true grand opening, grand closing.
And then somehow losing money probably on them overall because I had the house on Arkansas when they played.
Yeah, I mean, Oklahoma State did me no favors. The game that crippled me was them in Tulsa, where I swear to God, every possession was in the red zone and there were no points scored by Tulsa. Friends, we did it. As always, we appreciate you guys. If you have questions, it's not like you're not going to be seeing us. We're going to be doing stuff for bowl season, no doubt about it. Matt_Gajewski at JazzRazBets. And again, I really hope find what works for you, but we want you as part of the Stokastic and Odd Shopper families. So if you want to come in, we will gladly have you there to use tools, to get in Discords, and to have some fun and make some money. So on that note, just enjoy Conference Championship Day. It's going to be absolutely fantastic games. Thanks for tuning in. For me, for Matt, and for Mike behind the glass, third member of the team, good luck today, friends. Enjoy, and we'll definitely talk to you soon.